There are movies that get mixed reactions. And then there are movies like Barbarian. The adjectives I've heard used to describe this film are sicko, wild, gnarly, bizarre. It's the kind of movie you dream about if you grew up hunting the blockbuster aisles for the most obscure and inexpensive horror movies. The conversations in the theater lobby after my screening were all over the place. One guy even looked at me and my friend and said, "That was sure something, wasn't it?" He was right. It's something. But amongst all the praise and confusion I overheard about the film, the most common sentiment shared was, "Why did the movie cut to Justin Long so suddenly?" Or something to that effect. If you've seen the movie, and if you're watching this, then you should have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Halfway through the runtime, just as Tess and her unplanned roommate, Keith, encounter the mother in the most surprising and brutal fashion, the movie suddenly cuts to Justin Long, singing in his car. Jarring is an understatement. It goes from a mysterious, nail-biting horror film to a comedy real quick. Why do this? Why switch to a drastically different character? Why split the movie in two? Depending on who you ask, the mercurial nature of the film's tone and structure is either a feature or a bug. I don't think a lot of people will like switching protagonists and tone halfway through the runtime. But what it's not is style over substance. In fact, the movie's most unconventional quality is actually the movie's point. In an interview with Variety, Barbarian's writer and director Zach Cregger had this to say about the structure. The beginning of the movie is a woman desperately trying to assess threat and trying to determine if she's with a predator or not. Men do not have to be assessing threat like women do. So that was the story of the first chunk. And then the second chunk is the polar opposite. It's a man who is causing all of this damage and he's oblivious to it. He's not assessing anything about himself. And so they are spiritual twins. They're just the inverse of each other. And they both have to pass through the same gauntlet. Just as men and women navigate similar environments in different ways, Barbarian explores the same setting with different characters and with two different tones. Society is not always a welcoming or safe place for women, and so Tess navigates this house on the lookout for threats. She's wary of Keith, a stranger, whereas Keith has no problems welcoming an unknown woman into his Airbnb. In fact, he seems to see this as an opportunity to connect with a woman his own age. When Tess notices strange things in the house, like her door unexpectedly opening, she gets worried and tries to assess her safety. Keith, on the other hand, is sleeping through it all and seems rather annoyed when she expresses fear. This dichotomy is further demonstrated when Tess discovers the hidden dimensions of the basement. She's ready to run away and leave it all behind, but Keith has to see for himself before believing her, and he even explores beyond what Tess encountered, which ended up being his fatal error. Which brings us to everyone's favorite or least favorite cut in the film. Couldn't Cregger have demonstrated his point with Keith and Tess instead of bringing in a third character? Maybe, but switching points of view in jarring fashion, I believe, highlights how jarring of a difference it is in how men and women navigate and exist in similar environments. Tess's section is drenched in tension and horror because that's how most women feel in those environments. AJ's, Justin Long's section, is an absurd comedy because it's absurd just how privileged and unconcerned men like him are in those situations. He comically measures the floor dimensions of this hellish basement because his worldview has been shaped by dominance and ownership. Yes, splitting the movie between these two points of view is a bit awkward and uneven, and that might be the best adjective for the movie, uneven. But that's not necessarily a bug. It's not uneven due to sloppy writing or bad direction. It's intentional. It's the point. Because Cregger wants us to feel just how uneven our world is, and all the comedy and horror that stems from that. And the fact that Cregger pulled off this unconventional approach can only be described in one word. And that's great.